Du Young Kim stood at the large window of the space station, looking at the orange-red moon below. Pyrox 7 glowed like a burning coal in space. Most beings would see a deadly world of fire and death. But Du Young saw beauty. It reminded him of home, of the volcanic islands where he grew up. "Lieutenant Kim, they're ready for you in the meeting room," said a soft voice behind him. Du Young turned to see Ha-Won Park, his senior researcher. She was one of the few other humans on the station. Like him, she understood what it meant to come from a world that other species called a death world. "Are they still worried about sending me down there?" Du Young asked, straightening his blue science uniform. Ha-Won smiled. "Of course they are. They think we'll melt like ice cream." She laughed, but her eyes were serious. The Galactic Science Council has never sent a human to study Pyrox 7 before. They walked together through the clean white halls of the station. Their footsteps echoed on the metal floor. Through every window they passed, the burning moon kept watching them. The meeting room doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, 5 alien council members sat around a round table. Their bodies looked like they were made of blue crystal, and light seemed to pass right through them. They were the crystalline people, and to them, even a warm summer day on Earth would feel like standing in a fire. The head council member, whose crystal body had slight purple streaks, spoke first. "Lieutenant Du Young Kim, your request to join the Pyrox 7 research team is troubling." Its voice sounded like wind chimes in a breeze. "Troubling." Ha-Won stepped forward. "Du Young is one of our best geological experts. He grew up studying the volcanic regions of Earth." "Yes," another council member chimed in. "But Earth is exactly the problem. You Deathworlders are too unpredictable, too willing to take risks." Du Young took a deep breath. He had faced this kind of fear before. Many alien species thought humans were crazy because they could live on a planet with active volcanoes, strong earthquakes, and powerful storms. "Respected council members," he said calmly, "I understand your worry. But I grew up on Jeju Island, a volcanic island on Earth. The black sand beaches there were formed by lava, just like the surface of Pyrox 7. I studied in conditions that would surprise you." The purple-streaked council member's crystal body flickered with light, a sign of interest among their kind. "Tell us more about this, Jeju." Du Young pulled out his data pad and showed them pictures of Jeju's volcanic landscapes. The council members leaned forward, their crystal bodies catching the light. "Our people have lived alongside volcanoes for thousands of years," Du Young explained. "We've learned to understand them, to read their signs. This knowledge, combined with modern science, makes us perfect for this mission." Ha-Won added, "The very things that make you nervous about humans are exactly why we're needed here. Our natural heat resistance, our experience with volcanic environments. These aren't dangers, they're advantages." The council members whispered among themselves, their bodies creating small rainbow patterns as they moved. Finally, the purple-streaked leader turned back to Du Young. "Your species continues to surprise us, Lieutenant Kim. Perhaps what we see as reckless is simply a different kind of wisdom." The alien paused. "We will approve your request. You may join the research team on Pyrox 7. Du Young bowed slightly, showing respect in the traditional way of his people. "Thank you for your trust. I won't let you down." As they left the meeting room, Ha-Won patted his shoulder. "Well done. But you know this is just the beginning, right? The real challenge starts when you land on that burning moon." Du Young looked once more through the station window at Pyrox 7. Its orange glow reminded him of the sunset over Jeju's volcanic cones. "I know," he said with a small smile, "and I can't wait to get started." Later that night, in his quarters, Du Young sent a message home to his old professor on Earth. "Dear Professor Lee," he wrote, "remember when you said our volcanic islands might help us understand other worlds? You were right. Tomorrow, I start proving that humans aren't crazy for living with volcanoes. We're brave for learning to understand them." He looked at the moon one last time before going to sleep. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter, not just for him, but for all humans in space. It was time to show the galaxy that being a Deathworlder wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. The landing shuttle shook as it entered Pyrox 7's thick atmosphere. Through the window, Do-young watched streams of orange fire flow across the moon's surface. The sight made him smile. It looked just like the videos of Hawaii's Kilauea volcano that he had studied in school. Landing in 5 minutes, the computer announced. Warning. External temperature is 943 degrees Celsius. Do-young checked his environment suit one last time. It was much lighter than the ones the native scientists used. While their suits needed special cooling systems just to keep them alive, his suit was mainly to protect against the toxic gases in the air. The shuttle touched down at Research Station 1 with a gentle bump. As the door opened, a wave of heat rushed in. Do-young felt it even through his suit, like opening an oven door back home. 5 crystalline beings waited for him at the station's entrance. Their bodies sparkled with different colors, like diamonds catching sunlight. The one in front had swirls of blue moving through its crystal form. I am Blue Whisper, lead scientist of Pyrox 7 Research Station, it said in a musical voice. Welcome to our facility, though I must say, we are concerned about your presence here. Do-young bowed politely. Thank you for having me. I look forward to working with your team. Blue Whisper's body flickered with surprise at his calm tone. You seem very relaxed. Do you understand that you are standing on a moon that could kill most beings in seconds? Oh yes, Do-young said cheerfully. The temperature readings remind me of the traditional hot stone spas back home. Though I admit, it's a bit warmer here. The crystalline scientists looked at each other, their bodies flashing with patterns that Do-young guessed meant confusion or worry. One of them stepped forward, its body showing streaks of green. Excuse me, the green-streaked scientist said, but did you just compare our deadly research site to a spa? Do-young nodded. On Earth, we have places where we deliberately heat rocks to very high temperatures for health benefits. Of course, not quite as hot as here, but the principle is similar. Fascinating and disturbing, Blue Whisper said. Please come inside. We have much to discuss about your role here. They entered the research station through a series of airlocks. The inner temperature was kept very cool for the crystalline beings. Do-young could see his breath in the air. In the main lab, screens showed data from various monitoring stations across the moon's surface. Rivers of lava flowed past sensor points, and heat maps displayed patterns of volcanic activity. Yesterday, we lost contact with Sensor Station 5. Blue Whisper explained, pointing to a dark spot on the map. The lava flows changed direction unexpectedly. None of our team can get close enough to repair it, even in our best protective suits. I see, Do-young said, studying the map. The lava flow patterns here are similar to ones I've studied on Earth. I think I could reach the sensors safely. The room went silent. Even the usual shimmer of the crystalline bodies seemed to freeze. You want to approach the lava flow? Green Streak asked, its voice tinkling with alarm. But even our most advanced protective equipment can't handle those temperatures for more than a few seconds. Do-young pulled up some data on his tablet. Human bodies are remarkably heat-resistant compared to many species. With my suit's basic protection against the toxic atmosphere, I could safely work in these conditions for about 30 minutes. Impossible. Another scientist chimed in. No living being could survive such exposure. Would you like me to demonstrate? Do-young asked. We could start with a simple walk near the facility's outer walls. The temperature there is only about 800 degrees Celsius. Blue Whisper's crystal body pulsed with rapid color changes, a sign of strong emotion. You would do this, voluntarily. Of course, Do-young said. It's why I'm here. To help with tasks that are difficult for your people but manageable for humans. The crystalline scientists huddled together, their bodies creating a spectacular light show as they discussed among themselves. Finally, Blue Whisper turned back to Do-young. Very well. Human Du Young. Show us what a Death Worlder can do. But please understand, if we think you are in danger, we will activate emergency protocols immediately. Do Young smiled and began checking his suit seals. That's perfectly reasonable. Shall we begin? As he prepared for his demonstration, Du Young thought about all the times humans had been called crazy for living on Earth. Maybe after today, at least these scientists would begin to understand that what looked like madness to some was simply adaptation to others. The alarms in Research Station 1 started blaring at midnight. Du Young jumped out of his bed and rushed to the control room. The crystalline scientists were already there, their bodies flashing with worried colors. What's happening? Du Young asked, looking at the main screen. Blue Whisper's crystal form pulsed with urgent red patterns. The main volcano is showing signs of unusual activity. We're detecting strange energy readings that we've never seen before. The screen showed a massive spike in heat levels, but what caught Du Young's attention was the pattern of the energy waves. They reminded him of something he had seen before, back on Earth. These readings, he said, pointing to the screen, they look like the ones we saw before the underwater volcano near Jeju Island erupted. Green streak moved closer to the screen. You've seen this pattern before. But how is that possible? This is an alien world. Volcanoes follow similar rules, no matter where they are, Du Young explained. But to be sure about what's happening, we need data from the center of the lava field. The crystalline scientists all chimed at once, creating a sound like breaking glass. Impossible. Blue Whisper said. The center of the lava field is over 1,100 degrees Celsius. No one can go there. Do Young walked to the equipment room and started checking his suit. I can, he said simply. My suit can handle 30 minutes in those temperatures. That's enough time to get the readings we need. But the risk. Blue Whisper's body was now flashing between purple and red. Even if your suit can take the heat, one wrong step and you'll sink into the lava. Do Young pulled out his tablet and showed them a video from Earth. It showed people walking on cooling lava flows in Hawaii, testing the solid crust with special poles before stepping forward. See, humans have been studying active lava flows for hundreds of years. We know how to read the surface, how to test if it's solid enough to walk on. He paused the video. This isn't just crazy bravery. It's experience. The crystalline scientists watched the video in silence. Their bodies shimmed with colors that Du Young was starting to recognize as a mix of fear and curiosity. There's something else you should know, Du Young said, pulling up more data. These energy readings, if they mean what I think they mean, we have less than 6 hours before a major eruption. An eruption that could damage this research station. That got their attention. Blue Whisper's crystal form pulsed rapidly. You're certain? No, Du Young admitted. That's why we need the data from the center of the lava field. To be sure. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The alarms kept blaring in the background. Finally, Blue Whisper's body settled into a steady blue glow, a sign of decision. You have permission to attempt this, Du Young Kim, but you must follow our safety protocols. We will monitor your vital signs constantly. If they show any dangerous changes, you must return immediately. Do Young nodded. Agreed. I'll need some equipment though. Do you have any metal poles I can use to test the surface? As the scientists helped him gather equipment, Du Young sent a quick message to HFY back on the space station. Remember those volcanic monitoring techniques Professor Lee taught us? They work on alien worlds too. About to prove it. An hour later, Du Young stood at the airlock, fully suited up. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the orange glow of the lava field. It looked dangerous to everyone else, but to him, it looked like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Your species continues to amaze us, Blue Whisper said as they ran final checks on his suit. To walk willingly into what we see is certain death. Do Young checked his testing pole one last time. It's not about being brave or crazy. It's about understanding. Humans don't just survive on our dangerous world. We learn from it. And now those lessons might help save your research station. The airlock door began to open, letting in the intense heat of Pyrox 7. Du Young took a deep breath and gripped his testing pole firmly. "Beginning mission now," he said into his comm unit. "Don't worry. This is just another day at work for a Deathworlder." As Du Young checked his suit one final time before stepping onto the lava field, his mind drifted back to his first day at the Volcanic Research Center on Jeju Island. He could almost hear Professor Lee's calm voice explaining the basics of walking on cooling lava flows. "Your suit readings are stable." Blue Whisper's voice came through his comm unit, bringing him back to the present. The crystalline being's tone chimed with worry. "But the surface temperature is now 1,150 degrees Celsius." Do Young tapped his testing pole against the black surface of the hardened lava. The sound was exactly like the one he remembered from Earth. Some things really were the same, even on alien worlds. "Temperature is not a problem," he said calmly. "But I need to focus now, just like Professor Lee taught me." 10 years ago, on that first day of training, Professor Lee had taken Do Young to the black sand beaches of Jeju. They had walked barefoot on the hot sand, feeling the warmth of the earth through their feet. "The earth speaks to us through heat," Professor Lee had said. "You must learn to listen with your whole body." Now, standing on the edge of an alien lava field, Du Young understood those lessons better than ever. He carefully tested another spot with his pole. "What are you doing?" Greenstreak asked through the comm. "Our sensors show that area is extremely unstable." "I'm listening to the lava," Du Young explained. "The sound the pole makes tells me if the crust is thick enough to walk on. This is how we've done it on Earth for generations." The crystalline scientists fell silent, their bodies flickering with confusion and interest as they watched through the station's cameras. Do Young took his first step onto the hardened lava. Through his suit's boots, he could feel the intense heat, familiar and almost comforting, like the hot stone therapy his mother used to practice. Another memory surfaced, his mother treating patients by placing heated volcanic stones on their backs. "Our ancestors knew the healing power of volcanic heat," she would say. "Sometimes the things others fear can bring the greatest comfort." "Your suit temperature is rising rapidly," Blue Whisper warned. "Are you certain?" "The suit is working perfectly," Du Young interrupted gently. "These temperatures are high, but not dangerous for humans. Remember, we evolved on a planet with active volcanoes." He took another careful step forward. The surface crackled under his feet, but he knew the sound well. It was the same sound he had heard hundreds of times during his training. "Professor Lee," he said quietly to himself, "I wish you could see this. Your crazy student is using your lessons on another world." A sudden burst of heat rose from a crack in the surface. The crystalline scientists made sounds of alarm, but Du Young simply adjusted his path. He remembered Professor Lee's words, "The lava field is like a living thing. Don't fight it. Dance with it." "Du Young," Blue Whisper chimed anxiously, "your heart rate is increasing." "That's normal," he replied. "Humans get excited when we're doing what we love." He paused to check his instruments. "And right now, I'm doing exactly what I was trained for." Looking ahead, Du Young could see his target, the center of the lava field where they needed to collect data. The air shimmered with heat, creating waves that distorted his vision. It reminded him of summer days on Jeju's volcanic peaks. But something else caught his attention. His suit's boots were starting to show signs of stress from the extreme heat. Soon, they would begin to fail. Do Young smiled. He knew what he had to do, but he also knew how the crystalline scientists would react. It was time to show them something that would really surprise them. "Blue Whisper," he said into his comm, "I need to tell you about another human tradition. It's called fire walking, and in about 5 minutes, I'm going to show you why humans are the perfect species for this mission." The confused chiming of the crystalline scientists filled his comm unit as Do Young began preparing for what would be either his greatest triumph or his most spectacular failure. Either way, he knew Professor Lee would be proud of him for trying. Do Young looked down at his feet. The protective boots of his suit were starting to bubble from the intense heat. He had maybe 5 minutes before they would fail completely. But he needed at least 15 minutes to reach the center of the lava field and collect the necessary data. Your boots are showing critical damage. Blue Whisper's voice chimed through the comm with alarm. You must return immediately. Actually, Du Young said calmly, I'm going to take them off. The comm exploded with the musical sounds of crystalline beings all trying to speak at once. Their voices created a symphony of panic and disbelief. Take off your boots. Green Streak's voice rose above the others. But that's suicide. Do Young carefully sat down on a relatively cool spot of hardened lava. The surface temperature here was only about 800 degrees Celsius, practically comfortable compared to where he needed to go. Remember when I mentioned firewalking? He said as he began removing his boots. On Earth, humans have been walking barefoot on hot coals and volcanic rocks for thousands of years. The temperature of those coals, about 1,200 degrees Celsius. But how? Blue Whisper's voice trembled like wind chimes in a storm. Human feet are amazing things, Du Young explained as he set his ruined boots aside. When we walk quickly, we make very brief contact with the hot surface. Our feet don't have time to absorb too much heat, and the moisture on our skin creates a protective layer of steam. He stood up carefully, now barefoot in his suit. The heat rushed up through his feet, intense but familiar. Besides, these temperatures are only a bit hotter than the traditional hot stone therapy we use back home. This is madness. Someone shouted through the comm. No, Du Young said firmly. This is adaptation. This is why humans are called Deathworlders. We don't just survive in extreme conditions, we learn to work with them. He took his first barefooted step on the alien lava field. The sensation was exactly like walking on the volcanic beaches of Jeju, if those beaches were having a particularly hot day. Vital signs are stable. The surprise in Blue Whisper's voice was clear. How is this possible? Do Young kept moving, carefully but steadily. Each step lasted less than a second, just like Professor Lee had taught him. The human body is more resilient than you think. Our ancestors survived in every extreme environment Earth could throw at them. As he walked, he noticed something interesting. Without his boots, he could feel the subtle changes in the lava field's surface much better. He could tell which areas were stable and which were too soft to step on. Fascinating, he said, mostly to himself. Sometimes the old ways really are the best ways. He reached the sampling point faster than he had expected. The crystalline scientists had fallen silent, watching in amazement as he calmly set up his equipment. Beginning data collection now, Du Young announced. He pressed his sampling probe into the lava, watching as readings began to flow across his handheld screen. Just as I suspected. These energy patterns are exactly like the ones we saw before the Jeju underwater eruption. You're standing in the middle of a lava field, barefoot, taking scientific readings, Blue Whisper said slowly, as if trying to make sense of it. And you're completely fine. Do Young smiled as he collected another sample. More than fine. I'm comfortable. This is what humans are built for. We're not crazy for living on a dangerous world. We're perfectly adapted to it. The data collection took 10 more minutes. Throughout it all, Du Young worked steadily, his bare feet dancing lightly across the hot surface whenever he needed to move. The crystalline scientists had given up trying to understand and were simply watching in silent awe. Finally, Du Young packed up his equipment. Data collection complete. Heading back now. And Blue Whisper, I think we need to update your species database. Humans aren't just capable of surviving in extreme conditions, we're capable of thriving in them. As he made his way back to the research station, Du Young thought about how his ancestors would have reacted to this moment. They had walked on fire to prove their courage. Now, he was walking on alien lava to prove humanity's worth to the galaxy. Some things, it seemed, never changed, even across the stars. Du Young had just finished analyzing the data samples in the research station's lab when the ground began to shake. The tremor started small, like a distant truck rumbling past, but quickly grew stronger. Emergency alert. Blue Whisper's voice rang through the station. Major seismic activity detected. The crystalline scientists moved frantically around the control room, their bodies flashing with alarmed patterns of red and yellow. Their crystalline forms vibrated dangerously with each new shake of the ground. The data was right, Du Young said, looking at his screen. The volcano is about to have a major eruption, but something's wrong with these readings. He studied the numbers carefully, remembering similar patterns he'd seen on Earth. Suddenly, his eyes widened. Blue Whisper, this isn't just an eruption. It's going to cause a lava wave. The lead scientist's crystal form pulsed with confusion. A what? Like a tsunami, but made of lava, Du Young explained quickly. And it's heading straight for the research station. The crystalline beings began to chime in panic. Their bodies were already showing small cracks from the increasing vibrations. Du Young knew their crystalline forms couldn't take much more stress. We need to activate the station's heat shields, Green Streak said. But the control room for the shield system is in the outer section. The temperature there will be too high for any of us to survive. Du Young looked at the station map. The outer section was already hot enough to damage the crystalline being's forms. But for him, I'll go, he said, already moving toward the door. What do I need to do? You don't understand. Blue Whisper's voice chimed urgently. The outer section has lost climate control. It's over 500 degrees Celsius in there. Du Young actually laughed. That's not even as hot as a pizza oven back home. Tell me what I need to do to activate the shields. The ground shook harder. Through the reinforced windows, they could see the lava fields bubbling more violently. They had minutes, at most. You'll need to manually override 3 control panels, Green Streak explained quickly. They're meant to need multiple operators so no single person could accidentally trigger the shields. Show me where, Du Young said, pulling up the station schematics on his tablet. As Green Streak explained the locations, Du Young noticed the crystalline scientists were having more and more trouble moving. The vibrations were getting dangerous for their fragile forms. All of you need to get to the emergency shelter now, he ordered. Your bodies can't take much more of this shaking. But who will guide you through the override process? Blue Whisper asked, their form showing visible cracks. Send the instructions to my tablet. I can handle it. Du Young started pushing them toward the shelter. Go. This is why humans are here, to help with exactly this kind of situation. The crystalline scientists reluctantly moved to the shelter, their bodies chiming with worry. As the shelter door closed, Du Young heard Blue Whisper's voice over his comm unit. Du Young Kim, you are either the bravest or the craziest being I have ever met. Neither, Du Young said as he ran toward the outer section. I'm just a human doing what humans do best, adapting to survive. He reached the first airlock to the outer section. Through the window, he could see the metal walls glowing dull red with heat. The temperature reading showed 547 degrees Celsius. Du Young took a deep breath. Just like the hot stone therapy room at home, he muttered, except a bit warmer. The ground shook again, harder this time. Through the windows, he could see a wall of lava rising in the distance. The wave was coming. As he opened the airlock, a blast of heat hit him like a physical force. But Du Young didn't hesitate. He had 3 control panels to reach, and the lives of the entire research team depended on him doing it quickly. Professor Lee, he whispered as he stepped into this superheated corridor, I hope you were right about humans being born from fire, because I'm about to put that theory to the test. The superheated corridor glowed red around Du Young, as he ran to the first control panel. His tablet showed the temperature was now at 600 degrees Celsius. Sweat poured down his face, but he kept moving. First panel reached, he reported into his comm unit. The crystalline scientists were safely in their shelter, but they could still guide him. Place your hand on the scanner. Blue Whisper's voice came through, tense but clear. Then enter the code I sent to your tablet. As Do Young worked, he remembered something. You know, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. This reminds me of an old tradition from my homeland. You have traditions about running through superheated buildings. Green Streak's voice chimed with disbelief. Do Young laughed as he entered the code. We have a ceremony called Jwibble-Mori. During the first full moon of the Lunar New Year, people swing burning cans of straw in circles, creating trails of fire. The first panel lit up green. Do Young started running toward the second one. But why would humans play with fire? Asked one of the younger crystalline scientists. To chase away bad luck, Do Young explained, his feet pounding against the hot metal floor. Fire isn't just destruction to us, it's purification, renewal. He reached the second panel. It's life. Through the windows, he could see the lava wave getting closer. It towered higher than the research station now, a wall of liquid fire approaching with unstoppable force. Second panel activated, he announced. One more to go. Your body temperature is rising dangerously, Blue Whisper warned. Even for a human, this much heat. Let me tell you another story, Do Young said as he ran toward the final panel. In ancient times, Korean warriors would walk through fire to prove their bravery. But it wasn't just about being brave. He had to pause as another tremor shook the station. The metal walls groaned around him. What was it about then? The young scientist asked, clearly trying to keep Do Young talking. It was about understanding fire, he said, starting to run again. About respecting it. The warriors who survived weren't the strongest ones. They were the ones who learned to work with the fire, not against it. He reached the final panel. Through the window beside it, the lava wave looked close enough to touch. The heat was so intense now that the air shimmered around him. Like you're doing now. Blue Whisper asked softly. Exactly, Do Young said, placing his hand on the scanner. Humans don't just survive in extreme conditions. We learn from them. We turn them into lessons, into stories, into traditions. The final code sequence was longer than the others. Do Young's fingers were shaking from the heat as he entered each number. In my culture, he continued, we have a saying. Fire is everyone's teacher. It teaches us about danger, yes, but also about courage, about adaptation, about transformation. The panel finally lit up green. Immediately, a deep humming filled the station. Heat shields activating. Green Streak announced. Do Young, get to the shelter now. Do Young turned and ran back through the superheated corridors. His lungs burned with every breath, but he kept moving. Behind him, he could hear the shields powering up. Tell me more about your fire traditions, the young scientist said through the comm. It helps to hear your voice. Despite his exhaustion, Do Young smiled. Did you know that in old Korea, we used to have fire festivals? Entire communities would gather to celebrate with huge bonfires. He rounded the final corner to the shelter. Through every window, he could see the massive lava wave approaching. But now, the shields were rising. Transparent energy barriers that would protect the station. Why celebrate something so dangerous? Blue Whisper asked as Do Young reached the shelter door. Because, Do Young said, punching in the access code. Sometimes the most dangerous things can become our greatest allies, just like how a death worlder might turn out to be exactly what you need in a crisis. The shelter door opened, and Do Young stumbled inside just as the lava wave struck the shields. The crystalline scientists caught him as he fell forward, their cool bodies a blessed relief against his overheated skin. Welcome back, Firewalker, Blue Whisper said softly. I think we have much to learn from your people's wisdom. 3 days after the lava wave, Du Young stood in the main conference room of the space station. The heat shields had saved the research station, and now it was time to present their findings to the Galactic Science Council. The council members' holographic forms flickered in the center of the room, their crystal bodies showing curious patterns of blue and green. Blue Whisper stood beside Du Young, no longer showing signs of fear when near the human. "You mean to tell us," the head council member said, "that this human not only collected vital data by walking barefoot on lava, but also saved our entire research station?" "Yes," Blue Whisper's voice chimed proudly. "And the data he collected has led to an amazing discovery." Du Young stepped forward and pulled up the readings on the main screen. The energy patterns we detected weren't just signs of an eruption. They were evidence of something much more important. He showed them two data sets side by side. The left readings are from Pyrox 7. The right ones are from Earth's volcanic regions. Look at the pattern match. The council members leaned forward, their crystal forms shimmering with interest. "As you can see," Du Young continued, "volcanoes follow the same basic rules everywhere. By comparing these patterns, we can now predict volcanic activity on any world with 95% accuracy." "This is revolutionary," one council member said slowly. "But how did you know to look for these patterns?" "Because humans have lived with volcanoes for thousands of years," Du Young explained. "We learn their patterns first through experience, then through science. What seems like crazy risk-taking to you is actually careful observation passed down through generations." Green Streak, who had joined them for the presentation, stepped forward. "We've always thought of humans as reckless deathworlders. But after watching Du Young work, I understand now. They're not reckless. They're naturally adapted to conditions we find extreme." The head council member's crystal form pulsed with deep purple light, a sign of serious thought. "This changes everything we thought we knew about volcanic research. And about humans." "There's more," Blue Whisper added. Du Young's method of collecting data, what he calls the barefoot technique, has proven more accurate than our most advanced equipment. Sometimes, direct contact yields better results than remote sensing. Du Young pulled up another screen showing the new monitoring system they had developed. It combined traditional human knowledge with advanced alien technology. By using human heat resistance and experience along with crystalline sensing technology, we've created something entirely new, he explained. A way to study volcanic worlds that's both safer and more accurate than anything before. The council members spoke among themselves, their bodies creating beautiful patterns of light as they discussed. Finally, the head member turned back to Du Young. "Lieutenant Kim, we owe you an apology. When you first requested to join this mission, we thought sending a Deathworlder was a mistake. Now we see it was essential." Du Young bowed slightly. "No apology needed. Understanding takes time, just like understanding volcanoes. We would like to implement your new monitoring system across all our volcanic research sites," the council member continued. "And we would like to request more human scientists to help operate them." Blue Whisper's crystal form flashed with joy. Du Young has already offered to help train both human and crystalline teams to work together. "Actually," Du Young said, "I've been talking with Professor Lee back on Earth. He's excited about the idea of creating a joint Earth crystalline volcanic research program. We have much to learn from each other." The council members' approval lit up the room with waves of bright color. As they discussed the details of the new program, Du Young thought about how far they had come. Just a few days ago, the crystalline beings had been terrified of having a human on their station. Now they were planning to work together, combining the best of both species, human resilience and experience with crystalline technology and precision. "One more thing," Du Young added with a smile. "Could we include some traditional Earth firewalking ceremonies in the training program? I think they would help everyone understand the relationship between humans and heat." The council members chimed with laughter, a sound like tiny bells in the wind. Even they had learned to appreciate human ways. "Of course," the head member said. "After all, Who are we to argue with thousands of years of Deathworlder wisdom? 1 year later, Du Young stood at the entrance of the New Earth Crystalline Volcanic Research Academy on Jeju Island. The building was a beautiful mix of human and crystalline architecture, with walls that sparkled in the sunlight like crystal, but were as strong as volcanic rock. Hard to believe it's been a year since you walked barefoot on Pyrox 7, Blue Whisper said, standing beside him. The crystalline scientist had come to Earth as part of the exchange program. Even harder to believe how much has changed since then, Du Young replied, watching as a group of young crystalline scientists walked past with their human training partners. The Academy had become the galaxy's premier center for volcanic research. Teams of humans and crystalline beings worked together, combining their different strengths to study volcanoes across the galaxy. Professor Lee is about to start the morning ceremony, Blue Whisper chimed excitedly. I still can't believe you convinced us to try firewalking as part of the training. Do Young smiled as they walked to the training grounds. There, Professor Lee stood before a path of hot coals, surrounded by both human and crystalline students. Today, Professor Lee announced, our crystalline friends will watch as their human partners demonstrate the ancient art of firewalking. Remember, this is not about being brave or foolish. It is about understanding fire, about working with heat instead of fighting against it. The human students lined up, their crystalline partners watching with shimmering excitement. Even after a year, the sight of humans walking on hot coals still amazed the crystalline beings. Du Young, a soft voice called. He turned to see Yum Mi Kang, one of his best students, approaching with her crystalline training partner. Yes, Young Mi. Is it true that the Galactic Science Council is opening 5 more academies like this one? She asked, her eyes bright with excitement. Yes, Du Young nodded. On 5 different worlds. Each one will combine human heat resistance with crystalline technology. We're calling it the Barefoot Initiative. Yum Mi's crystalline partner chimed with joy. And is it also true that you're going to lead the one on Pyrox 7? That's right, Du Young said. Blue Whisper and I will be co-directors. We'll be teaching the next generation of volcanic researchers, both human and crystalline. They watched as Professor Lee demonstrated the firewalk, his bare feet moving smoothly across the glowing coals. The crystalline students shimmered with amazement, their bodies creating patterns of light that danced in the morning sun. You know what the best part is? Blue Whisper said. No one calls humans crazy Deathworlders anymore. Now they call you Firewalkers, with respect. Do Young thought back to that first day on Pyrox 7, when the crystalline scientists had been terrified of having a human on their station. Now, humans and crystalline beings work together across the galaxy, each bringing their unique strengths to the task of understanding volcanic worlds. A small crystalline student approached Do Young, its form glowing with shy purple light. Mr. Kim, is it true that on your first mission, you walked barefoot on real lava? Yes, it is, Du Young said kindly. Would you like to hear the story? The student's crystal form brightened with excitement. More students, both human and crystalline, gathered around to listen. It all started when I was assigned to a research station on a volcanic moon called Pyrox 7. Du Young began. The crystalline scientists there thought humans were crazy for living on a world with active volcanoes. As he told the story, Du Young watched the faces of his audience. The human students nodded in understanding when he described the heat, while the crystalline students chimed with amazement. But all of them understood the lesson. Different doesn't mean wrong. And what seems impossible to one species might be natural to another. And that's why we're here today, he concluded. Not just to study volcanoes, but to learn from each other. Because sometimes the best way forward is to walk barefoot on the path that others fear to tread. Blue Whisper's crystal form glowed with warm colors. And to think, it all started because one human decided to take off his boots. Do Young laughed. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest steps. He looked out at the academy grounds, where humans and crystalline beings work together under the shadow of Jeju's volcanic peaks, or in this case, with bare feet on alien lava.